All right. Hello, everyone. Salam, namaste, adab, and welcome to today's event. Today we have three poets. One poet is going to moderate the session. All three poets' names are there: Shweta Rao Garg, Basudhara Roy, and Indran Amirthanayagam. Sorry for if I could not
No, that's
pronounce.
okay. Okay.
Yeah. So he is the one who is going to formally introduce all three, including himself. And we have put the bio also in the chat box. But Basudhara is not a newcomer here, only third time. She teaches English at Karim College in Jamshedpur. She has written eight books of poetry collection. And one of them is A Blur of a Woman, which is here on the uh, poster. And Shweta Rao Garg is the first timer here. She is our neighbor here and teaches at Johns Hopkins. She has written a graphic novel called Tales from Campus, a misguide to college. And her first poetry collection of goddesses and women, which is part of this poster, has been published by Sahitya Academy, India. And the moderator here, Mr. Indran, is a very accomplished poet, diplomat, translator, editor, publisher. He has published 28 books of poetry. So, with this brief, formal or informal introduction, I now invite Mr. Indran to take care of this session as a moderator, and also if he can elaborate on the formal introduction. Mr. Indran.
Thank you so much, Rashid. Delighted to welcome listeners and viewers to this program. It's really an honor to be invited to serve as a moderator for these two fine poets, Shweta Rao Garg and Basudhara Roy. I think the introductions you've already given were sufficient for the moment. Let's get to the meat of the conversation and the listening. And let's begin with the listening, hearing poems from each of these two books of goddesses and women and a blur of a woman. I want to hear first, if I may invite Shweta. Well, let's do it this way, if that's all right, Shweta. If you could read some of the poems from your collection, and then let's hear Vasudhara Roy read some poems, and then I'll ask a few questions of each of you, and we'll engage in our discussion. That's all right. May I invite Shweta to begin reading
Sure.
from her book of Goddesses and Women? Thank you.
Sure. Sounds great to me, Indran. And thank you for the session, Razi Saab. Thank you for the group. Thanks, Basudhara, for introducing me to the group. And Indran, as always, a poet, friend, and now a world traveler, because every time I call him, he picks up his phone from different countries, different continents. As of now, you're in Peru, and if others may wonder why his screen looks different, because he's logging in from his phone. So thank you for being here. So I would like to begin reading my poem, maybe three of them. So the first is an invitation, an invocation. And again, this is something that Basudhara and I were having a discussion, and she suggested. So Basudhara, this one's for you. The poem's called Kali, Come for Tea. Kali, come for tea. Milk, rose water, occasional blood are some beverages you've had, but I can guarantee you'd love the taste of tea. I shall add ginger, some mint, a dash of sugar, if you will. But Kali, you must come home for tea. Whenever you're free from dishum and you think you need a break, take a rick and just come. If you allow a selfie too for my timeline, I will keep it simple, just some cookies, then we'll chat. About what? The usual: work, weather, Husbands? I have a hunch we'll be friends. We shall go out for shopping and lunch. Sorry for keeping you. I'm sure you need to be elsewhere and stop the world from destruction. I too need to go to buy vegetables for dinner. But remember, there is no formality. Do come home for tea.
Bravo.
The second poem I want to read is again something that Basudhara suggested. So this is something which I don't usually read. It's a mixed bag of emotion for me. It's called On a Basant Panchami, a festival in India. On a Basant Panchami, you are draped in a Van Gogh yellow, a paste of mustard, turmeric, and sun. In the season of Saraswati, the temple is thronged with some embarrassed students standing in line to get blessings on their books and pens. You skip that line and join the crowd to see the adorned Saraswati with her fish like eyes, her perms, her gems, and maybe other gods who make a cameo in her film. This year, she is a pure glory in white. The camphor puts you at an instant high. You pray for inspiration, for success, for that rare vision. You plan to stay, to plead till the professor acting as priest would push you away. You half expect her to reach out through her plaster of Paris lips. You stare long enough to feel her eyes come alive. You inch towards a divination till you recoil at someone grabbing your ass. You look around the crowd and then at her with disbelief when the professor, acting as priest, finally pushes you away. You think you saw water in her fish like eyes.
Mm.
Do you want me to go with one more?
Yes, please.
Okay. This one is one of my funny ones. It's called My Mummy Ate Me Up. That was years back. I rolled and kicked in the dark until she threw up. Doctors cut her tummy and let me out. I was gasping for air, but alive. You see, I'm not to be chewed off so easily. Now, with spoon in her hand, she chases me around. Eat, you skinny child, she commands. I lose my breath, open my mouth to cold metal carrying mashed rice. It's a conspiracy to swell me with fat. I don't show, but I know Mummy fancies eating me, containing me in her sack. Her hungry eyes shine as I gulp down the grub. Oh, you grow so fast, she sighs. I wonder she thinks how difficult will be the task. Yes, I shall grow fast and tall and tower over her, make her feel dwarfed, and Mummy would only shudder at the thought of me ever being in her tiny, dark tummy.
Wonderful, wonderful, Shweta. Thank you so much. I really have so many questions bursting out, but I would love to hear from Basudhara first and then engage in a conversation with both of you. That's all right. So thank you for those poems. Were deeply moving and ironic and funny as well. And Basudhara Roy, thank you.
Yes.
A blur of a woman. Yeah.
Thank you, Indran, and thank you, Razi Sahab, for giving us this wonderful opportunity to be here. It's always a very special feeling to be with your group. So thank you very much. So as Shweta said, both of us had been having a conversation on how, we might plan to go ahead. And Shweta had suggested a few poems that she would like me to read. And going by Shweta's suggestion, I begin with a poem which is called 6 Ways to Kill a Poem. 1. Feticide. To begin with, ignore it. Nip it in the bud. Try telling it doesn't exist and has no reason yet, no need, no place in the world to keep. that one can as well do without it, and that it would be wise to abandon the very idea of being born. If its eagerness does not cease, beat the womb to pulp and make a grave of it for the patriarch to spit. 2. Ostracize. If it still insists shamelessly on arriving, judge it. Tell it that its shape and color do not fit, that it remains unsanctioned by order or creed, that its blood, when it bleeds, is not blue, that if met on the streets, it would have to stoop to tie a broom and avoid contact with the rest, forced to look for clay cups, to find another well, and ensure to not cast shadows upon the best. 3. Violate. If it dares, however, to assert itself, tell it it is wrong, and it is not the way a lowborn behaves. Tell it its mouth may be gagged, its head shaved, its face laved generously with acid, its skin scraped off its feet. Warn that it may be burnt as a witch, or crumpled and left with a vagina filled with thorns. 4. Delegitimize. If it refuses to be cowed, take heart. Tidy your laws, make a new start. Summon it to prove its identity. Interrogate how its existence as a pawn can be. Find what papers it has to prove its history. Record the chronology of what its ancestors lost in another land, on another sea, to make in this country a home. Plague it with questions, till forgetting the color of its faith and bread, it becomes pale with hunger and dread. 5. Lynch. If it keeps insisting it's a poem and has every right to be, don't mind it much. Simply place it at the center of a vegetating crowd programmed to hate, and watch the spate of abuses heaped upon its head. Watch it, ridiculed, fingered, pinched, beaten, trashed, lynched, till the poem, like a mob, goes nameless. 6. Send missing. If somehow the poem still resists, and it is difficult to erase it in an accident by daylight, or smother under scrutiny of cameras at night, get it quietly abducted. Ensure it is traceless, missing, gone, mysterious, strong in its disappearance. Let the world wildly look for it till it admits defeat, until memory too forgets that a poem ever was. Postscript. Caution. Note, however, that godlike poems resurrect, almost always after death. That they never die, but like the shadow of a lie, arrive steadfastly to rake the truth. That they penetrate through miasmas to haunt dreams, minds, books. They are chasmophytic and can thrive in crevices, fissures, rocks. And the day they knock, they fearlessly lay open graves. Thank you. That was 6 Ways to Kill a Poem. Can I read another shorter piece, Indran?
Yes, please, go ahead. Or
So-
two more pieces as you wish. Yeah.
One more, since
Okay, great.
I took up a longer piece. So this is, I will try to maybe soften it and also reinforce it with this ghazal. It's called Ghazal of the Body. In this cosmic song, a refrain of the body. To windows of violence, the pain of the body. Through every siege of rage, rape, raise, oblations demand the grain of the body. Commandments of conquest in every land. Not one mandates the sustain of the body. The righteous claim oneness of God and tongue. Their logic, a riot of the insane of the body. What grows not within will bereave you soon. All earthly accretion to the vein of the body. Our salvation lies in enduring with others in this prison of life, the chain of the body. The ritual of love makes it tough to forget. Heaven was lost to the mundane of the body. Martyrs remind us how every time divinity lies in the profane of the body. You etch every constellation on your palm, yet secrets line the arcane of the body. This human frame is our only bond. In astral chaos, the pertain of the body. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Those are two very, very powerful poems. Much to think about and ponder. And, hearing your poems, hearing Shweta's poems, I'd like to ask you both, as poets writing today, are you writing as women poets, as poets? What is there a particular perspective that we as readers, whoever we are, you want to give us a message, a lesson, something to carry away beyond each poem? Because in terms of the themes that you touch upon, the tone. I mean, I ask you both to meditate on the notion of a feminine gaze or a women's gaze, and whether that is a even an appropriate or a relevant way to look at your poems, and or whether we should be considering each poem as a poem participating in the universal sort of collection of poetry written by whoever, whether male or woman or. Okay, so go ahead. Please let us know your thoughts on this. Thank you.
Basudhara, you want to start?
No, I think you begin.
Okay. So you've asked a lot, like a lot to
Yeah.
think about. So I resonate with this not just as someone who writes, who happens to claim the title of a poet, but also someone who reads all kinds of poems. So the first question, like, would we call ourselves women poets later on? Would we call ourselves as someone who's inspired by feminist movement, and would we call ourselves feminist poets? I don't know. Like, for me, for the most time, I was even struggling with the notion of calling myself such and such, sort of claiming the title of poem seemed too hallowed for someone as me. So making that choice, putting out your verses in a public domain, daring to publish, calling oneself a poem was itself in some way act of, strong act of subjective assertion, in some way inspired by probably the feminist idea of claiming the space for oneself, claiming the voice for oneself. So, but at the same time, is my subjectivity primarily subjectivity of a woman? Like, is my persona always a woman? Probably that's a default lens with which I look at the world. I would not lie and say I'm more than my gender. Maybe not. So I have this lens, and this is the way I look at the world. The way I experience the world in which I'm situated is as a woman. But then, minute you come from India to US, I'm not only a woman, I am a brown woman, and there is these other kinds of baggages which is attached to what I may have to say, what may have to write, what may I have to share with the world. So yes, one has a unique perspective on how one experiences the world. And again, I am born into this world where I inherit, there is this whole grid of mythology. So even if I don't think of myself as a religious person, I think myself as being very much molded by mythologies around me. And you see that coming through a lot in my poems, because as a woman, I look at how for instance, goddesses, right? So goddesses are not something out there. Goddesses are around us when we grow up in a country like India, right? So we see humans acting as goddesses. We see gods acting as humans, because most of our gods are so vulnerable, so sometimes flawed, and they have these fraught decisions to make. So I think yes, my subjectivity is of a woman born into a particular culture, and inherited with the kind of questions and issues we feel in day-to-day life. So definitely a woman's perspective. At the same time, I want to add this, that I don't just believe that writing about the violence, the bloodshed that happens to a particular gender, or is the only thing which I consider as feminist, because I believe talking about the rose garden that your grandmother maintained, or talking about the spice box that your mother had and you miss, is also in some way a part of feminist expression. And I think I delve with both. So it's not always about sending out a message to men and women. Sometimes it's just sharing my humanness, my subjectivity, sharing that tiny vision which inspires me. And I would still believe maybe it is feminist, because maybe for some men, or maybe in some other centuries, people would think twice about writing a poem about something which could be considered trivial or frivolous. So you see that maybe a lot in my writing, which people may push out as saying, why would even one write about this? I would, because that's also part of my being a woman, and dealing with what subject would I write about. And I think I've taken enough time. I can't wait.
No. Brilliant reflection. Thank you. I'm wondering about you also as an artist, as a visual artist, as a painter, and so on. How if the expression, pictorial expression, is parallel to the poetic expression, or is it just another opportunity to express yourself, in this case with pigments and colors and so on. But um, and isn't it, when we talk of the word artist, we think of a universal concept, whether a man or woman, whoever it is. So what, I mean, I suppose if we look at feminist poetics or something and try to understand the themes of a particular woman's poems, and then look at some other poems and see, perhaps identify what comes up in your work. For example, writing about Kali and tea, is is it a domesticity of where the gods come into your sort of, and but at the same time you talk about any subject is yours to write about. In other words, that seems to be something I share myself in my own writing. I don't want to hem myself in, and I use that word hem guardedly, I don't want to lock myself into a particular skirt when I write. And I want to feel free. And this notion of writing freely about anything and everything, is that finally what we all seek as poets? But because of the nature of the inequalities of the world, the the hands put on the ass of at times, the sort of the obsessions and the transgressions, we inevitably respond to that in our poetry, and our work can serve as inspiration for young people growing up, taking confidence in their own voices. And but I do wish we could arrive in a world, or create a world, where the word poet is sufficient and complete, and not a woman poet or gay poet or whatever. I mean, anyway, these are just some reactions to what you just said. Basudhara, would you like to add or respond to the theme of a woman's voice, a woman's vision? I mean, in the
Yes.
two poems you read, I see them as universal themes, universal concerns about the poet and what the poet does. But anyway, go ahead and tell us about your thoughts on this, on your vision. When you sit down to write a poem, are you writing on some level unconsciously as a woman? Uh,
Uh, Yeah, yes, Indran, thank you. And I think that I'm mostly trying to be very conscious of the fact that I look at the world as a woman. Because somewhere I feel, and I'm also aware of the fact that the term woman itself, is not, it itself is a plural term. So when I talk about being a woman, I also talk about being a woman at a specific time and at a specific place. I am limited by by who I am. So somewhere my subjectivity is a kind of reference to my identity. So a particular gerontological perspective, a particular, I would say, locational perspective fits into, this, and of course, the everyday transactions with the body that I possess. So I'm not just a woman, I'm also probably a sick woman. I remain, unwell for considerable periods of time. And I feel so all this, I think it enters into my, experience of the world. So mostly when I'm trying to write, I look at it as how, I look at it. So it's about avoiding a kind of generalized perspective, and it is trying to, feel the reality, aware of my privileges, aware of, the kind of world that I inhabit, the inequalities, the injustices. So it is general. For example, there have been people who say that, just as you said, that these are universal poems, and reading them, one may not feel that they might have been written by a woman. They might not be something which is gender specific in any particular piece. But then I feel I'm always consciously trying to look at the world as a woman. I'm trying to look at the world as a woman who faces what I have faced, or who has undergone the kind of experiences that I have undergone. And mostly, I think I'm mining my own experiences when I'm writing. I'm, going back to my past, and I'm going back to how I have seen things or taught to see things. So when I'm questioning, I'm also questioning what I have been taught personally. So what I might have been taught may not have been the same kind of tutelage that other people would have been imparted. So somehow I'm ceaselessly, I think, mining myself. And so that is, I believe, that is very integral to my perception of the world, that I'm trying to view the world as a woman, and I'm trying to bring experiences, I hope, I mean, at least that is what I aspire for, to bring experiences that might not have been discussed in literature, or that might not have been spoken about. This is what I want to do. So that, I mean, there would be others like me, and when they read it, they feel a sense of resonance, that, oh, all right, this happens. So to accomplish that kind of resonance, I think I need to lay bare all parts of myself. So that has been, one consistently motivating thing for me.
I'm very taken by your investigation, self-investigation. You're digging into yourself and revealing layers and layers of how the world has impacted you, and your response. And we find in these poems. You call your book a blur of a woman. Now, why a blur? I mean, one thinks of a blur, and as an image we don't want to have on the cover. We want a clarity. We want. And yet it seems like a metaphor that fits perhaps in a world, in a divided, unequal world, the way some people are treated. They're seen as blurs, as not having substance, not having their own vitality and rights. Is that what you're thinking of when you think of a blur, or when you come up with that title? Of course, it is the title for the whole collection, so it inevitably guides the reader. Are you guiding the reader towards a sort of contradictory discovery about about the woman. Indeed, a woman is not a blur, but the opposite. Tell us about that.
So, yes, one of the points that you already mentioned was this kind of insignificance, blur. It's a binary to clarity. And while, people are always looking for clarity, I find that blurring is also, it also gives you a sense of empowerment, because blurring means, not countenancing any kind of label or definition. So Shweta was just talking about how she refuses to be labeled, or she does not want to be placed inside boxes. So I feel that there is that kind of potential that the blur has to offer us, that it resists a kind of definition, it resists a kind of label. So that was one of the attempts to transform the blur into a space of empowerment for women's multiple identities. But apart from that, for me, a blur is also, it kind of signifies I was trying to talk about the physical and the emotional economics of labor. Women are constantly working. They are working day in and day out. They're working for themselves and they're working for others. So also, the professional and the personal involvement of women in their lives, I think, I would like to say, it has at least culturally been greater than that of men. So this continuous blurring, flowing in between spaces, that also leads to a kind of, non-definition, because sometimes you forget who you are, or you tend to put yourself at the end of everything. And by the time you have arrived at the end, you have almost forgotten what you intended to do. So I think this is also a very common trope, that women face. So blurring is also about that. It's motion, which is so fast that the exact shape of it is forgotten. So you're
Okay.
moving all around. So I think that I was trying to communicate that also, this multitasking, the fast movement of women's lives. So that also, I think, was one factor that stimulated my choice of the title.
Very good. Yeah, kind of the flashing part, running with 6 different things to do and getting them done, and giving you tea at the same as well. And so, anyway, very, very, very good. Shweta, may I ask you of goddesses and women, and then perhaps you can take off on this conversation about a blur of a woman, the more women's roles, the many roles, and perhaps talk to us about how these different goddesses enter your poetic sort of consciousness and your vision. And you write these incredibly, at times, funny and ironic poems, such as the one you read about Kali and tea and so on. Or perhaps, and also take off from here, conversing about that, perhaps read us a couple more, and also Basudhara, another couple of poems, because you also have poems about loss, I think, in your book, in the sense of a loss in love, for example, a kind of the end of a relationship. And I think these are universal themes, whether in whatever culture. And I'm just curious to know whether we're curious to hear a couple of those poems as well. Shweta, would you like to take off on why goddesses and women, and how the goddesses enter the blur of your daily life?
Sure. I mean, I don't know, when a goddess enter, it's like in some way anti-blur, because when she is in the room, she is the central point of the room, right? You don't see anyone else because she bedazzles everyone. But I think there is an attempt, I think not just me, but like most people I know, most artists worth knowing, where they try to have a conversation with the divinity, because we realize that divinity to so many extent is man-made, woman-made. We create a divinity, and our gods come to us sometimes have conversations in our living room. And for me, the image of Kali sitting, as I would maybe, and me, or the persona, trying desperately to impress this guest with the best kind of tea, wanting to try strike a friendship, but then also realizing that there is definitely, even if there is this very short sort of transient proximity, we come from different worlds, quite literally so there is this sadness perhaps that one wants a connection but one can't go beyond anything, but at the same time there is this humanness to Kali, because one expects that what we can go for shopping. So my idea is perhaps not to lay myself bare like poet like Basudhara does so well. In some way I'm afraid of doing that, and at some and gods provide a great mask to tell me, to help me narrate what I want to, my unique perspective. So in some way, like I utilize the vehicles of divinity to narrate the kind of stories I want to. And earlier on, you asked an interesting question about the connection between my visual art and my poems. So many of the poems in the collection, and later on, I see it comes to me in images, it comes to me in words, it comes to me in some way a multimodal fashion in my head. So many a times I paint my poems. Sometimes I paint something and I write my painting. So I've done both of these. And especially this collection of Goddesses of Women. Also, I mean, Sahitya Academy asked for my painting and they chose this. This is again a portrait inspired by my sister. So I think it comes to me as both. I use a lot, as you mentioned, and again, Basudhara also sort of pointed out when we discussed that there is this irony in there, and sometimes you need someone else to point out, okay, this is what I do a lot. And if I was not a painter or a writer, I would probably try to sort of tell jokes on stage, because I think that I have so much, I mean, most women have so much anger that the kind of anger either breaks you down, gives you lifelong acidity, or makes you an artist. I mean, at the end of it, there are different ways you can channelize what you feel. So I think my poems are not angry, anguished poems. Then somehow I use the turn of the poem to make it ironical. I use verbal irony, also a lot of humor, and some of my verses end up sounding weird. And my paintings would be in that sense surrealist. So it's my way of dealing with a lot of anger that I have around the world where we live in. And I'm not, I mean, I would like to call myself an activist, but I would not, because in my head I'm doing this. At the same time, I have this constant awareness that, does it matter? Move anyone? Am I putting out a message which can change the world in any discernible way? And I know it's a rhetorical question, because probably not. The max it's going to do is maybe get someone, if someone were to look at my poems, perhaps to feel the sense of, using a Sanskrit term, saharadaya, which means, sharing a similar vision, having compassion on a similar thing. And that is the maximum that I expect from my writing. Sharing a joke, a perspective, a vision with someone who's like-minded is max that I want from my poem and my writing. Yeah.
Beautiful. I'm wondering about the vulnerability, the exposure, the self-exposure one engages in writing or painting and so on. To both of you, just do you find that in the, for example, Shweta, the goddesses come in as metaphors, as a way, as you explained, to tell certain stories that otherwise perhaps you couldn't tell. So they are a literary device in a sense, or a metaphor, picture. If you're a playwright, they're a character that allows you to explore certain ideas. And then, but how does that relate to the people you're close to, in your family, your friends? How do you worry about revelation of some that of hurting or being hurt somehow? I mean, that the poem is. I mean, you are an artist, both of you. You are poets. You have a certain social, perhaps I don't know if you feel this way, a certain social community responsibility. I mean, I feel that I write a poem, for example, when I write a poem, I write for myself, yes, but I write for a read, a certain person I can imagine having tea with. Perhaps we can ask about this, we can talk about this. Who do you write for in particular? And how do you deal with writing about very sensitive, very very difficult, emotionally wrenched subjects. When you think about who might read your poem, who might hear your poem. Shweta, Basudhara, if you could, thanks.
For
Yes.
me, I mean, as I said, I'm so I'm sometimes so scared to really reveal what I actually feel. So you're right. So I mask my emotions by using these personas. But talking about who reads my poem, so as I said, these are people whom I don't have a face. I don't imagine anyone reading, and if I do, I don't think I can write anything. I can be even, I can be authentic in any ways. If I imagine, say, my mom reading it, even though I would like her to read it. So as I said, I imagine someone somewhere, not even in the same time or space, reading it, making a connection. And it doesn't have to come to me. I don't have to know that someone read it. It's like, putting a message in a bottle, throwing it across the ocean. If someone gets it, great. If someone doesn't, I've put it out. And when I think of that someone may read it or not, I feel more emboldened to write about what I want to write. Because for me, I have phases where I write so sporadically, and I write as if it's spring of my brain, and then for months, sometimes years at end, it's autumn, it's winters, and I just think that there's nothing that I can fertilize, there is nothing that I can do. And at this moment in life, I think I've come at peace to that. So I know that, okay, if this is the phase when I'm probably recuperating, absorbing, observing, raging inside, there will be a time when I will sort of, explode into activity, explode into paintings and writings. So there is definitely this cycle that I have come to know myself as a creative being, and I'm at peace with it.
Wonderful. Peace beyond all. At the end of the peace at the end of the road. Basudhara, would you like to reflect on this? Who you write
Yes.
for? Yeah, go ahead.
So I think when I began writing poetry, that was many years ago, I started writing initially for myself. And I was, as Shweta says, I was initially afraid of, revealing. So I thought that I had to write to conceal, because there was this fear that what would people, if people who knew me, what would they begin to feel? But I think this phase did not last for more than maybe a couple of years. Because one thing that I keep insisting, when I teach poetry, is that we need to understand that a poem can be as fictional, as any other text. So the kind of autobiographical, obligations that seem to be attached to the reading of a poem have adversely affected both the reading of poets and the reading of poetry. So mostly what I do is I like to bring a poem to class, and I like to give very diverse interpretations of the poem, many of which would militate, against the autobiographical perspective. So I believe with the new critics that poetry is entirely, it's a text that is created out of words just as any other text. So there need not be the kind of reading that practices that have followed so far. What the poet is trying to say. The poet is trying to say nothing. The poet just puts words together, and it is the job of interpretation lies with the reader. So in many ways, I have been able to convince students and myself in the process that poetry is as much fiction as any other fictional piece. So the speaker in the poem need not have any correspondence with the poet himself or herself. So I think that ever since, these ideas about poetry have been clarified in my head, the fact of vulnerability hasn't bothered me, because somewhere it has to do with the kind of story that a poem says. So I think I write for anyone who is interested in a story, and anyone who is open-minded to understand that the story need not be necessarily mine, but the story it belongs to somebody. Most of the time when I'm writing, I'm not necessarily writing as myself. I could be writing as someone else. I could be taking on a persona, as Shweta takes on the persona of these goddesses that come to her. So I could be taking on the persona of somebody, and inhabiting that persona, what I write, is not coming out from me. It is coming out from that speaker. So I think I write for everyone, and I do like to have readers. I would not be happy like Shweta, just throwing the message in a bottle and not bothering about whether it is read or not. I remain conscious of, and mostly I'm very eager to know what someone feels if someone has truly read a poem. I'm just very eager to know whether my words, the intended effect, was accomplished or not. So I'm mostly very eager for that. So I think I write for anyone who is interested in a story. And mostly I'm trying to tell a story. I'm trying to put something forward. So if the message goes across, then I feel that contributes to my, I would say, efficiency, if not successes. Success is a huge word, but I would say, it's a kind of task well done. So and every poem is an act of communication, and it needs to be communicated, and you expect a feedback, then only the process becomes complete. So I feel that once a poem has been written, and if I have a few, well read and well reading people read it and offer some concrete feedback, so I feel that the poem's job, is being done. It might reach more people, it may not, given the fact that so much of the text is fast disappearing these days. Reading itself as a habit is fading. So I cannot visualize a future for what I write. But yes, I'm very conscious of putting across a message, and I really hope that the message reaches the reader, and mostly I'm very eager for the kind of feedback. So vulnerability doesn't disturb me anymore, because I have convinced myself that my poems are stories which are not necessarily about me, and I'm not bothered about the fact that somebody might consider it as my own story, and that would be another story. Somebody looking at it as a story would be another story, and that might lead to more poems. That's it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Look, Auden wrote, as we all know, poetry makes nothing happen. It exists in the valley of its saying, a way of happening, a mouth. This is this concept I have. I love his poem that he wrote that poem, those lines, but I have always railed against that the idea of poetry makes nothing happen. For me, I'm sure for all of us, it releases endorphins. You feel better. Catharsis takes place. So many positives, benefits for the poet, but also I think for the reader, the listener. Um, Perhaps our poems don't change policies of government or stop wars, but a poet's lines are cited at the signing of the peace agreement, by one of the parties, uh, where history and poetry rhyme. I mean, that when Seamus Heaney's lines are quoted, uh, talking about the Irish Accords. I mean, it just, but you can go through. Um, I also think poetry is valuable not only for funerals, not only for the commemorative services. It goes beyond that elegy. So I keep thinking of the public role of the poet as something important to champion, and the community proselytize a role, the sharing of and the galvanizing role of the poet. So I think both of you, though writing, exploring oneself, writing about the domestic in some sense, the domestic is the public. It's our lives. You're writing our lives, the lives of the poets, so anyway, look, in the time that we have remaining, perhaps we can hear, would you like to each of you read another poem, and then we can and then we can open the session to the moderators, and I mean to any questions people might have listening. Does that sound good? Yeah. Would uh, would you like to begin with read one more, Shweta, and then Basudhara?
I'm
Thanks.
reading the last poem from my collection. This is called Once Upon a Poem. Once upon a poem was small. You could hold it in your palm and close your fist. It shone a bit. It felt a little rough. Some called it richly textured, some called it uncouth, some a deliberate attempt to shock. No matter what they said, the poem grew. It was now more self confident. You could not pick it up, you could see it full bloom in across the pages. It gathered colors, strewed leaves after leaves. You could water it if you wish. Some said it's a garden. Some said it's cluttered. Some said it needs trimming a bit. The poetry grew. Now you could not contain it in pages or in gardens. It spread itself against the sky, the vast expanses of the land and the ocean. The poem was now part of everything. It frightened people. They wanted perfect globes to hold, sharp, shapely shrubs to water. But this poem was too unruly. Then some said, let's ignore that it exists. Many more said, let's forget it is around. Everyone agreed to avoid the vast expanse of poetry in the sky, the earth, the ocean. Then it began to shrivel. Then it shrunk. It shattered silently and dispersed in the wind, never to be seen again. But sometimes, while walking in a lonely town, you may come across a shred of shining lines from Once Upon a Poem.
Bravo. Thank you. And actually, one of the requests from the audience is to ask for more poems to recite it. So anyway, we just met that request. Basudhara?
Yes. So I'll read a poem which is called, I hope it's a little playful after the serious pieces that I read. But it's again, it's its own kind of poem. So the title is Lalita Speaks. And this is a poem which is about, just a line of explanation for the audience. It is about the phenomenon of what we understand as the Ras Leela, where, Krishna is supposed to have played with the gopis. And mostly in conventional received narratives of the Ras Leela, the Ras Leela is about the bonding between them, the sisterhood between them. So Lalita speaks, and Lalita was one of the gopis, very close to Radha. So this is Lalita speaking. Lalita speaks. Mostly it wasn't about him. Though yes, we did need that magic cowherd in our midst. No one will disagree he was a heartthrob. We swooned over his pearl teeth, his tree bark skin. But it was chiefly his flute that did us in. If you believe music strips the soul, know that his notes undressed us, till our scarves, grudges, obligations were all blown away. That is how he stole our clothes and our butter bowls, ceaselessly inviting us to play. And we went, all of us Sakis, Vishakha, Chitra, Indulekha. He knew we held each other's hearts in sway, trembled like waves in the other's embrace. Radiant in Shringar as we interlocked sandal-rubbed arms to dance around his halo at the center, it seldom escaped Govind's eyes that our attention lay at our partnered sides. How else could he explain conjugal bliss in each of his 16,000 wives? The village thought our ecstasy came from him. We played along. Between whining children, jealous sisters-in-law, and disinterested husbands, this 1 hour alone was ours. Surfeit with freedom, Limbs supple like vines, we danced, thrilled to be where love was recklessly returned. In those moments, they say, we became Krishna. Well, we became Radha too. In love's river, it is difficult to say who is who. After the cowherd left, we sang by the Yamuna. Oiled, bathed, pleated Rajnigandhas into each other's hair. Our hearts blooming like lotuses. They have many stories about us. But Krishna alone knew our soul script, our breath. Some men, you see, are not afraid. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Each poem invitation to meditation, to deep and interesting, very interesting. The 16,000. Well, no, let's go to the Q&A and respond to some of the questions and comments in the chat. Shall I pass the mic over to
Yes, please.
to Rasi?
Yeah. Thank you so much for moderating this part. Usually we have our own host for the Q&A. It was a wonderful session. So let's continue for the Q&A. But before that, coming Saturday, we announced for what is the theme. So coming Saturday is totally different theme. As you know, we are multidisciplinary forum. We keep on bringing all different kind of themes. It's a very sensitive issue. Islam, caste, and Indian Muslims. As you know, Islam doesn't have caste system, but Muslims certainly do practice caste in a different way. So that is the issue that we are going to discuss coming Saturday. Professor Masood Alam Falahi, who is a well-known writer, a former vice chancellor of a small university in Lucknow, Khwaja Muinuddin Chishti Language University. He's going to talk, and other two will be joined. So over to Dr. Rafat Hussain for moderating this part. Rafat.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Raziuddin. And thank you to all three wonderful speakers. I was mesmerized, I would say. Those young, brilliant minds. Wonderful. So the question and answer session is open now. So you can raise your digital hand or put your interest or question and comment in chat box. And I will continue following both of them. So let's begin with the request from Shabnam Marchandani. And she wants to respond briefly to the discussion. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
All right. Well, I was deeply inspired by this discussion today. And I actually noted down the context for my praise, if I'm permitted to share it for a minute or so. So patriarchal stereotypes, as we all know, always tell an incomplete story. But sometimes feminist narratives also fall prey to a kind of neoliberal logic, which itself becomes hegemonic with its focus on progress and outcomes, rather than the expansion of one's being and values, which both of you alluded to pretty consistently. Now, power structures which are exploitative are as old as civilization itself, but so is dissent. And we must be careful, though, that means do not subvert the ends and perpetuate systemic injustices. While there's no meta model that exists for this, maybe the pursuit should not be just on book sales and franchises and hashtags, but a focus on what the author Robin Wall Kimmerer calls the gift economy, where the barter is not transactional, it is communal. And this is what I love about poetry, where the most ontologically radical endeavor can happen in somebody's living room with a bunch of women talking. And that is what I found happened today, because the setting is so intimate and the communication is so direct and authentic and heartfelt. So I commend you. And from Basudhara, I have learned a profound lesson that one has to often resort to imaginative silence. Because without rumination, restoration cannot happen. And I'm also very inspired, Shweta, that you engage in ekphrasis. I am a painter myself. And at the end of the day, I do believe that all art is a spiritual science. So thank you all for a wonderful, wonderful experience. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any comment from any of three speakers?
I would like to thank you, Shabnamji, for your such a generous, observation, and importantly for invoking Robin Wall Kimmerer and her idea of gift economy. Since I've read this book, I've been thinking, as I openly say that I'm not an activist, even though I would want to believe in that. And I think that what she talks about, the idea of reciprocity, it takes us back to how our maybe ancient communal system worked, maybe just before the advent of modernity, where everything is transactional, everything is mercenary. Even this idea of, reviewing and counter-reviewing, it may seem communal, but at some way is also very, very transactional. So thanks for invoking that. And more importantly, for saying that you were in some way reminded that the kind of discussion we had today was very communal. So thank you so much for that. And one thing that you spoke about is the dangers of creating another kind of a narrative, which is a feminist narrative, where maybe there isn't spaces for different kind of stories, then it becomes as hegemonic in some way as patriarchal narratives, right? So I think it's a great point that you make. And this is something which I'm sure Basudhara has a lot to add, but something which I can add is, in many of my writings, kitchen is a pivotal space for women to come together. And many times there are many many feminist friends, readers, artists who object to that, saying that aren't you then partaking in the patriarchal narrative of essentializing women, connecting them with food, with kitchen? And I would and that's something which always makes me wonder, which makes me perplex at why do we have one way of reading a narrative? Why is it the minute you talk about the kitchen, it's always deemed as a patriarchal construct, And then I talk a lot about joys of cooking, for instance. I am an artist, but I'm also an avid, passionate cook. So there, and again, it's similar. Like it comes in creative spurt for me, where someday there is feast and someday there is let's just have bread today again sort of days. But that's also a part of creative channelizing for so many women. And I see that so in certain feminist spaces, it's not something that you will be comfortable talking about it. There is definitely an anxiety in talking about caregiving as being feminist.
Yes.
So I really admire what you brought into the conversation today. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you,
also,
Shabnam, for being here. And
I
I
just
just
wanted
want to
to.
say that Shabnam is one of those people who has been consistently following the terrain of Indian English poetry. She reads, reviews most poets, and her feedback is always very, very generous and constructive. So Shabnam being present here is itself a very, very important tribute to our session. Thank you very much, Shabnam, for your presence and for your very valuable words as always.
Thank you. And to Shweta, I actually loved your message in a bottle concept. I think it's the perfect antidote to the commercial juggernaut. So may your message flow through the oceans.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for Jabbar Bhai. Sorry, I put you on spot. Go ahead.
I know you do that all the time. It's not new. So I'm kind of outlier in terms of poems and poetry. studied science, and it's kind of I'm not. Some people are very good with this integrating science and arts and poetry, but I'm not. But I grew up in Tamil Nadu listening to Bharati songs. One of the important poets, I think, not only in Tamil Nadu, for India. I just posted the AI because AI is works great nowadays. Otherwise, I have to gotta go through writing my own impressions about him. But I think it's in terms that you have a model. I think some years ago, I think he died very early. He was also against British Raj. He's a social reformer. So, in fact, 40 years ago, it's a very interesting. Dr. Azuddin posted great granddaughter of Bharati's work. Her I think uh, I think put opinion essays about Bharati. So I think it. I've been talking to is my personal plug here. So I think I want. I've been telling Dr. Razwin Saab that he should bring the person Sundar, the Bharati's granddaughter, to discuss some of the contributions of Bharati, So I think that's what I just wanted to, remarkable listening to all three of you today, because it kind of brought back the memories of my childhood, school year memories about Bharati's songs, and even now is the most influential poet in Tamil Nadu. That is my kind of 2 cents kind of thing, because given my lack of experience in poetry, this is what I could say. Thank you very much.
Thank you much. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We are very grateful that we could remind you of such a great poet. So thank you. That means a lot to us.
Thank you.
And thanks for sharing the text. I could see that you've shared your text with everyone. So thanks for that.
Okay, thank you. So let me put few more people, our regular people, on the spot. Maybe one is Dr. Nazir Ahmad, and other would be
Rafat Professor Girija Sharma is there.
Oh, she's back because I searched.
Yes.
Okay, Professor Sharma, please go ahead. In the meantime, I will request Dr. Syed Amir and Dr. Nazir Ahmad to be ready. Go ahead, Sharma ji.
You got disconnected, looks like.
Oh. I don't see him unless he's in a different name. Nazir Saab, are you there?
Gee,
Go ahead, please.
no,
Your expert comment.
It's my ghost.
Okay.
I'm not here. Enchanting. I did have a question relating to the I in your poems. And I raised that question deliberately because modern man thinks only in 2 dimensions. And we become prisoners of these 2 dimensions and define our I in terms of the color of our skin, our nationality, etc. Whereas the Tao in your poems, gods and goddesses and so on, have multi-dimensions. And the poet uses words to connect the I and the Tao. So I was asking myself how each one of you individually, as obviously well-known, accomplished poets and so on, define that I. Who are you?
Good. That's a good question. Go ahead, both of you. Who wants to go first?
Shweta, you want me to take that? All right. So as I said that, yes, the I in the poem is the I that you say is divided, is gridded by so many factors. There's birth and nationality and caste and creed and the economic and social and cultural position. So I think the I in the poem is an I who can be located within that poem itself. So the I comes from the poem. That I would not have come into existence had that particular poem not come into existence. So the body of the poem becomes the location of the I. And the purpose of the I is, of course, to make you realize that we are, similar. There is something that inheres between us. There is a bond between us. So this I springs from the body of the poem, and it tries to make connections that would draw you, no matter who you are, no matter how separate you are from the I, there would be certain points of connection. So I think every poem that way is a leap of faith. It's making a leap of faith into thin air, and the objective is to be caught, to be met, to be embraced. So I think it's very similar to what Shweta said, as putting the message in the bottle and throwing it with the hope that, it gets across. So every message is certainly a message that intends to be delivered, whether one is conscious of the process of delivery or not. So I think that this is the leap of faith that the I in the poem is making, with the objective that there would be a we somewhere. So what Martin Buber, the philosopher, also calls, the I and thou. So we are going to make a we somewhere, and there is going to be a kind of unity in the consciousness somewhere. That is the hope. If it has been achieved, I think that would be the victory of a poem. If it is not achieved, then there is something that still is not enough. There's something that is amiss, something that is missing. So that is it. If it achieves it, that is the poem's, that is its salvation, I would say. Shweta, over to you.
No, I mean you summarized it so very well. When you were talking about I and thou, Dr. Ahmed, I was reminded of Muhammad Ali. So apparently he was invited to a great university for a convocation talk, maybe late 70s, and he was asked to end his speech with a poem because it was Muhammad Ali, for God's sake. And he probably spoke aloud, which is probably the shortest, but like very poignant poem, if you may call it that. Me, we. So and again what Basudhara said, that at some level, like there are multiple eyes, different eyes in different poems, but at the end of it, one hopes that it sort of aligns with the we's of the world, so the me becomes we at many level. That is definitely the hope, consciously or not. So I may talk about me, Shweta, thinking and ruminating about the world, or it could be me thinking about Kali, how she ruminates the world. I like to write from the perspective of my son in different stages of his growth, a perspective of my grandmother, my mother, sometimes my father as a young boy.
I lost it. मैं योगा कर रहा हूँ, मेरे को गुस्सा नहीं आना चाहिए, but
Sorry about that. Please continue.
Sorry. Okay, sorry. So I'm saying that no matter what persona we take, there is definitely this there is definitely our lenses through which we are filtering it. So that is us, and there are others, and the connection between the two. Thank you for asking this question.
Wonderful. आमिर भाई.
और
Thank you.
मैंने देखा कि पत्थर का रंग चेंज हुआ है पानी की.
Who is that?
Yeah, I muted him twice, but let's see.
I enjoyed the talk very much. It was very nice. But I'm sorry, I don't have anything insightful to add. But thank you.
Amir Bhai writes, he's a writer, so I thought Amir Bhai should have some comment. And
Professor Girija is here back.
Again?
I do not know what she disappears.
Girija Sharma, yes, he is there. Please go ahead. I ask you to unmute. Okay. Sharma.
Yeah.
Professor Sharma, please.
Well, good evening. Yes, it was a brilliant session. I enjoyed listening to both the poets. Their poems are deep, very, very sensitive, and of course, overwhelming. However, when Basudhara, you pointed out that these poems are fictional, I took it with a pinch of salt because I've read your book, The Blur of a Woman. The poems which have been written in the first person narrative, they all seem to come from deep within, and they sound highly subjective also. Maybe some of the pieces you might have sort of imagined yourself to be somebody else, and you have uh, I mean, empathized with the person you've written about. But the poems which have been written in first person narrative seem to be so very subjective because of the emotions that you have, narrated. They are very, very personal. And I surely would like to say that I do not find them fictional at all, because I think at the end of the day, uh, 20th century poetry is subjective, and this poetry actually is the outcome of deeply felt emotions. And I guess when you say they are fictional, are you trying to conceal, as you said earlier also, that these poems have been written more to conceal than to reveal? And I guess Shweta also referred to that particular idea, that these poems, I mean, any poet would sometimes would like to conceal. So, I mean, it's a very forthright question, and I'm asking you. But when you said that these are pieces of fiction, I really took it with a pinch of salt. So, how would you like to respond to that? Sorry,
Thank
my connection
thank
is
you.
a little
I can.
unstable today.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
yeah.
much for joining us, for being with us, for such close attention. So, yes, what you say is perfectly right, that they come from, uh, they come from there. You have to inhabit a cell. For example, there's a collection, there's a series of poems there. It's a triptych. There are three poems, which Shweta had even asked me to read, but I felt it would be too painful to bring here. And it's called Shoka. And the Shoka, it's a set of three poems that deals with the loss of a child. It's an elegy for a dead child. And
Yes.
one of my very close, one of our neighbors lost their son during COVID, and the poems come out from the grief that I witnessed. So it's very painful, if even when one is taking up a person, or when one is taking up a particular stance in order to write, uh, you have to undergo all of that. The pain or
Yeah.
the rage, or whatever it is that you are talking about, even if it is not yours to begin with, it has to be undergone. I mean, it has to be felt in the bones, it has to be felt in the veins. It cannot be
Absolutely.
anything but a deeply experiential truth. So I
Mhm.
think it's a very deep lesson in in empathy. It's something like ventriloquism. You know how to throw
Mhm.
your voice. You know how to throw your emotions that way. So that way,
Mhm.
you become everything. You become all that you inhabit. Every voice, every persona that you have to put yourself into it. So
Mhm.
it cannot be done without that. But then
Mhm.
again, I call it fiction because I have two children. Have I lost a child? At present, no. So it would not be autobiographical in that sense. But just because I
Mhm.
haven't lost, it's not that I'm not aware of the grief. So it
Mhm.
is that, every standpoint. And then there are also, for example, I think I have many poems, maybe not in this book, but in my other books that talk about
Mhm.
mental, instability. So that you could call it madness, you could call it. So there's a pathological tinge to some of my poetry. I like to. I have seen women who are, who have undergone trauma and the kind of behavior, and there are times when I feel the world is, breaking down. So it is about a moment. The moment passes, but if I can capture what that moment brings to me, then I have a story there. I have a poem there. So so when we talk about a unified consciousness, that may not be part of my unified consciousness, but I have gone through it. So it is there. It's a part of me. So again, that would be, so you are very true when you say that it cannot be anything but deeply subjective. And yet, if I would like to talk about the me, the public self that I am, I would say these are not parts of me. So even then, I would also be right, and you would also be right. So this is how, and maybe you're right. Maybe that's a fiction that I build for myself. That all poems are fictional. Again, it would be equally right. Yes, Shweta,
Brilliant,
over to
brilliant
you.
answer. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So there are a couple more minutes left, and I don't see any raised hand. So I have an idea. Maybe I can request Indran to recite his poem. So let's see. Where is Indran? Show your face, please.
Hello. That's very kind. What a wonderful session.
Let's
Thank you.
fill up a few more minutes left. So go ahead and give your best shot.
Thank you. Very kind, and thank you, everyone, and Shweta and Basudhara in particular. I've been enjoying the conversation. I'm actually traveling back home to Sri Lanka at the end of the month. And I will be reading there and in India at the Jaipur Festival in January. So if any listeners are going to Jaipur, perhaps we can meet there the week of the 15th of January to the 19th. A poem from memory. It's called You Must Love. You must love the land when you leave to build your house on the sea. What's lost? The mango tree burning in the garden, the curious noose of the familiar coat of arms. Love the ball turning strong, spinning in a dark, faraway land. Love the tongue you'll never again speak, that wrapped you and bled you and dried up some every day on the other side of the sea. You must love it. A poem that was born in the loss of my original tongue, Tamil. And then I have spent my life gaining new tongues and writing in them, but always with the nostalgia for that original tongue, that original island. Anyway, thank you very much. Thanks to all.
Okay, so now I wanted to hear comment from Shweta and Basudhara.
Oh,
Or analysis or analytical comment.
I would like to respond to Indran for not just bringing in the poem, and thank you so much for asking Indran to recite, because I really thought that we can't have a session by Indran and not hear his verses. And one thing I want to, I mean, if people who may not know Indran's work, he's a profuse poet, but he's also poet of the world. That's what and something which he talks about, losing a tongue and then acquiring so many in the process. So I sometimes lose tab of how many languages he can express himself in. And what I love about his oeuvre is that he's a diplomat. So some of his poems are these grand, big narratives responding to the political upheavals, the social upheavals of the world. And sometimes it is about this one particular poem. The scene which I can't forget is his mother powdering her face in her own pace, to use your line, Indran. So I love the macrocosm and the microcosm of Indran's world. And maybe soon, Indran, after you're done with your travels, in your literary pilgrimages in India and Sri Lanka, maybe when you're back, maybe you can talk about your new work, one of the new works.
Thank you. I would love to do that. I'm actually going to present a new book in Sri Lanka called White Space Sonnets. So it's a book of sonnets, but I call them free verse sonnets. So it's sort of playing with, from the position of a free verse poet, approaching a traditional form, the sonnet, and using some elements of the sonnet and not ignoring others, creating I hope, a new form of interest to the reader and listener. So, and Shweta kindly did an amazing job gifting me the cover design of the book and also some comments about the poem. So thank you, Shweta, for that. Looking forward to seeing the book when I get to Sri Lanka. Well, thanks.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, Razi Bhai, I am passing back to you because I don't see any comments and I don't want to drag it any further. So, before I pass on to Dr. Raziuddin, thank you once again, all three wonderful speakers. You made my day. It was a beautiful poems and I really loved it. Where were you hiding? I don't know. Razi Bhai just found you. And one is local, like you are from John Hopkins. Okay, so
Yes.
one day probably we have to invite.
Baltimore. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, because my kids are in Baltimore. I'm also
Perfect. You're
living
welcome.
close
Yeah.
to Baltimore. So
Great.
let's invite you and then have a wonderful session. And thank you once again, Razibhai, back to you for your